This is Crow Inquisitors, and we are here with another behind-the-scenes look at one of our characters. Today I have with me my good friend Jared to talk about everyone's favorite character, Alfons.
I feel like you're jumping the gun there a little bit.
I feel like a lot of the people listening to the show will probably have Alfons as their favorite character because he's a lot of fun to watch just mess with people.
Yeah.
But I'm positive that for the people in the characters in the game and probably the players, Alfons is not necessarily their favorite.
Oh yeah, David tried killing me in the first episode, right?
The first episode, yep.
That was like the first roll made.
Yeah, it was you. No, well, that's not the first roll that was made. You actually did make the first roll, and it was to try to annoy the guards so that they would go beat up Dylan in his cell.
I forgot about that.
And they end up beating up you instead. Yeah, Jared, you got to listen to the episodes, man. First and second episode are out. You got to listen to them. They're quick. They're like condensed, so it's easy to listen to them.
They're not 5 hours.
Exactly,
long.
they're not 4 or 5 hours anymore. But yeah, so we're talking about Alfons Tahn, and I guess I'll start with what inspired you to make Alfons in the first place? Like, what were your inspirations? Why did you make the character the way you did? Obviously, everyone was supposed to make a criminal of some sort, right? With the Suicide Squad kind of like initial concept. But yeah, I mean, what were your inspirations?
Well, mostly you just said, you're all gonna be criminals. I'm like, in my stereotypical fashion, I just throw everything I can at the wall and see what sticks and what you accept and will allow.
Very true.
And yeah, I kind of just went wild. Made the worst possible person I could.
Yeah, I think I remember we were on a camping trip together, right? And we were basically just like going through all of the possibilities of like things that you could have done, and you just kept asking more and more, like, could I have also done this to be thrown into prison? And then of course we ended with the big one. Where we were going through like your resource points or whatever, right? And you're like, well, okay, I have these like 2 resource points left. What if I buy?
Oh yeah, because they're all the stipulations you can add to your NPC characters. Like, oh, how bad can I make this relationship be?
Exactly.
To be able to purchase it for the 2 points I had.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And so you're like, I think it actually ended up being 1 point because I think it was you did close family, romantic, and forbidden. Right.
It was certainly forbidden.
And so you ended up having an incestuous relationship with your sister. So
who just happened to be the daughter of the Pope.
Yes. I mean, yeah. Yeah. Good old Alfons. I remember you saying that to me, and I was like, okay, I have a decision point to make. I'm at a crossroads here. Will I allow this? And I think it.
I'm going to have to roleplay your incestuous sister.
That's true. Yeah, and I did. I did end up having to roleplay her at one point. I remember definitely there being a moment where we because I think we ended up roleplaying that in in the second season we had that encounter, right? And it was we were doing like an in-person kind of like side thing. Like we were both just in my room with the streaming camera, like, rolling dice live and stuff. And I remember there being a moment where I was just like, this is really awkward.
Yep.
And yeah, I mean, so why exactly? Was it literally just like, I want to make the worst guy imaginable?
Oh yeah, I took basically the general setting we had and like, okay, how bad can I make him, and what do we have going so far? And I also like toying with David, which is fun.
True. Yeah.
May as well sleep with his sister.
Yeah.
Who just happens to be my sister as well, but whatever.
Yeah. So if we're looking at your life paths here, so one of the things that we don't really talk about in the actual like game ever, and so people listening to the podcast probably don't know the character's life paths. So just briefly for Alfons, he was born noble, and then he was a page briefly, and then he dropped out of the Holy Knighthood, and was a student and a courtier for 2 life paths. So any particular like reasons you chose those options?
Well, this character was the first time I'd ever touched the burning wheel system.
Yeah.
And I kind of just was flying by the seat of my pants. I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing. Yeah. But it all turned out all right because I came became very overpowered. And
Yeah.
I basically just went the talking path because, in typical David fashion, he min-maxed the swordsmanship
Right.
and being a beefy boy.
Yeah, I think I remember. What was it? I think it was probably at the end of the second session. So I don't think this is a spoiler at all. Not that it would be a big spoiler anyway, but just I remember us talking at numerous points, but especially at the beginning, like Alphons is just a fate farm. Like he had so many beliefs, instincts, and traits that just got him into trouble constantly and complicated the story, so that he just kept earning faith. Like I think for most of the first season, you earn like 5 to 8 fate a session, which is ridiculous. So yeah, I'm looking at your sheet right now, and I'm not going to tell people like how much fate and persona and deeds you were, and I won't necessarily imply that like Alphons makes it all the way to season 3 or whatever, but like where we left off with Alphons so far, he ended up with quite a few fate. So,
I mean, it's also the whole one of the benefits of making the worst possible character. It leaves the most room for growth, and that's what the system encourages and rewards points for. So
for sure, yeah, absolutely. And you ended up doing Gray Shades, and that was something that we didn't. I don't think we understood how weird.
I did not know. Like, oh yeah, you can do this thing. You can spend a bunch of points and shade that gray, and that'll make a bunch of other things gray. I'm like, okay, sounds good.
Yeah, I mean, my first mistake was even telling you and David that you could have Gray Shades, because your actual stats ended up being like completely gimped.
Yep.
If I remember correctly, and I think this is actually said in the first episode, you started off with a 1 in speed.
Yeah.
Which is ridiculous. Like if you think of an actual human person, basically you're like the most slow, sluggish individual, uncoordinated possible. But it's actually funny because in the first episode, we just talked about this, but in the first episode, you get a light wound from those guards. And technically what that actually means in the rules, we didn't pay attention to this, but it means that you should have been unconscious instantly at the beginning of the game because you had 1 speed. So that should have just knocked you out.
Funny.
Yeah, I know. It's very funny that there's so much that wouldn't have happened if Alphons had just been knocked out in the first thing.
Yeah. Or if David would have killed me.
Also true.
That roll would have 100% killed me. That would have been the quickest unbeatable speed run to death in an RPG ever. Yeah.
And I talked about this a little bit with David, but the Gray Shades with you two, I'm definitely interested in the future of Crow Inquisitors, and we do this to some extent in the game, in the first 3 seasons of the game anyway, just continuing to explore like why Alphons and Dylan have Gray Shades in the first place, because technically in the Brimo rules, right, those are like saved for like dragons and giants and heroes of legend. So I'm interested in like discovering why the heck I let you guys have those Gray Shades in the first place. I've come up with like an in-game reason.
I'm just an extremely sexy boy.
Right. Yeah, because you Gray Shaded your will and your fort, so you ended up having a lot of Gray Shaded stuff. It's funny because Dylan actually didn't Gray Shade the right thing. He Gray Shaded his agility, and he only had 1 skill that was based off of agility.
Yep, he was telling me about this the other day. He's like, I was so proud. I was min-maxing everything, and then like later on, I realized I'm a complete idiot because like I Gray Shaded the wrong thing.
Yeah, because he should have just Gray Shaded the sword, and then that would have saved him a bunch of stat points that he could have used on other things. But yeah, okay, so I mean, moving on from like the character as like an inspiration and stuff, like what do you remember from playing Alphons? What were some of your like favorite moments, or like, you know, in general terms, but then also like what was it like, I guess, to play Alphons in Crow Inquisitors?
I liked it because I normally go like the big tanky beat him up guy where I can just cut my way out of any situation. But for this one, the way I built him, he was constantly getting into difficult situations that the only thing I could do was talk or sleep my way out of.
and honestly, like I think in the next, well, I don't want to spoil it. Never mind. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of situations where like Alphons just did not have the the martial skills to like fight his way out of any problems, and so he was constantly like trying to weasel his way out of like conflicts he ended up in. And honestly, I feel like if I knew the Burning Wheel better when we were playing Crow Inquisitors in the first place, there would probably be several moments, the first session included, where I wouldn't have actually allowed you to make those sort of persuasion rolls last second, because technically there's actually like a page in the Burning Wheel rules that says like, if you're about to get stabbed, like you have to deal with the physical act of being stabbed before you can talk your way out of the situation. And so I think I ended up letting Alfons do his like talky talk way probably too much. But one, we were learning the game in the first place, and two, I think it's pretty interesting given just seeing like Alfons being like superhumanly able to talk his way out of situations. It definitely created an interesting flavor for his character. How did Alfons interact with the other characters? Like, from your perspective, what was it like interacting with the other party members?
It was always fun walking the line with David, whether or not he's going to kill me. Yeah. And Connor is this very serious, gruff guy in comparison to my, at least early first season, carefree, not really caring about anything, just do whatever I want attitude. Yeah, I feel like I didn't clash very well with anyone except maybe Adam's character early on.
Right. Yeah. No. You and Theo were pretty tight as far as like, I think you two basically immediately hit it off, and I don't think there was ever a point where you guys were like that you guys didn't like each other at any point in the game. Where there was definitely moments with all the other characters where Alfons rubs them the wrong way. But I think honestly, the only thing that really comes up later in the first season, and I'll be vague with this, is you and Theo end up kind of like sort of having a rivalry over a girl. Which is fun to see.
One of my favorite scenes. I won't spoil anything, but one of my favorite scenes comes out of where he's trying to go back and talk to her. If you remember what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Where he tries using his what skill is that?
Faith.
Yeah, his faith skill.
No, I'm very excited about that. That's coming up. That's a fun sequence. Yeah, I mean, what other stuff do you remember about like playing Alfons in general that like stands out to you?
It's hard without the spoils.
Yeah, right, for sure.
A lot of the I love the progression early season that I fail so much at everything that isn't talking.
Right.
That I just rapidly level up everything.
No, that's actually really true though. I was just glancing at Alfons's character sheet, and I was like, what the heck? How does he have a 5 in speed? And he started off with a 1. And it's because he just had such low stats that and skills that he just ended up having to use them to get out of situations and ended up pretty in a pretty good spot with most of them. Yeah, you have some interesting skills, right? You have persuasion, seduction. Bullcrap wise is one of my personal favorites.
Yep. From
Alfons. It's one of those things that like it's just such a you skill to have for a character. And you're right, actually. When you mentioned it before this point in our like role playing game history, you didn't play a character like this. You basically always played like the tanky characters, right? There was Djembe and Mogar are like the prominent ones. Yeah. Mognitus. Your Anthony Divilwurst. Trying to remember. What's his face? Marcos from Heads and Worthy. All more.
The only other instance I could think of is the one wizard I played after Djembe.
Right, but even then, like you started playing that character around the time, like not too soon before we started Crow Inquisitors, right? So it was for most of the experience that we had playing role playing games together. You had done like the more like fighting optimization stuff. And honestly, I feel like Alfons Tahn, it was a great, I think the reason why Alfons is so evocative in the game is because Alfons is the type of character that Burning Wheel highlights really well. because of the focus it has on social skills.
Mhm.
So, Alfons had so many moments where he was like, I remember at the end of the second episode, you guys get to the gate of the town, and the guard calls down and says, who are you? What's your business here? And I remember Josh says, we all look at Alfons, and you said like validation. So like everyone knew from the beginning, like Alfons is the guy you point to when you need someone talked to. And there were a lot of fun moments that came out of that like dichotomy.
Yeah, we all had a very, very specific
skill sets.
Tailored like skill sets.
Yeah, and the only unfortunate thing was that because Antonius and Cantarius had like specific skill sets that weren't as immediately general as fighting and talking were. There were definitely some moments where they, especially in this first season, feel a little what's the word I'm looking for? I mean, not in the spotlight as much. And they end up having good moments for sure in the first season. But Dylan and Alfons are a force to be reckoned with. They're very evocative characters, very driven characters. This is one of the things I was talking about with David too, is Antonius and Cantarius, and Theo, honestly, all start off having much more vague motivations. While Dylan and Alfons, pretty much right at the get-go, you both knew exactly what you wanted to do with your characters and where they were headed. And so they definitely have a lot of like good character moments.
Yeah, definitely character growth-wise, I know where I wanted him to go, but definitely I wanted to have that fun at the beginning of season 1 where I was just basically just a carefree jerk. And it was... I enjoyed both thoroughly.
For sure, yeah. I'm trying to think if there's anything else with Alfons. Obviously, there's a lot of good, fun stuff that ends up happening with him later in season 1 and in season 2 that we can't really get into. I was trying to think if there's anything like more general we can talk about. What was it like, I guess, to be so antagonistic? David often plays antagonistic characters. Like, that's kind of his shtick in our games. But Alfons was a very antagonistic character from the get-go to everyone in the party. How did you, you talked a little bit about that, but how did you kind of balance that in your mind? Because I feel like, real quick, in another gaming group, Alfons is the sort of character that would annoy not just the characters but the players as well, right? Everyone would have hated you for playing that character, but I don't think there was ever a moment in the game where like and people didn't like you for the way you were playing Alfons. So talk about that.
Well, everyone in our group, like IRL, we've been friends for most of our lives, so
right, yeah.
Like I wasn't too worried about that. And despite how much of a jerk Alfons is, he's just the lovable jerk that you can't stay mad at. He sleeps with your sister. That's fine. He can talk his way out of it.
Yeah,
he's just too lovable.
That's fair. Yeah, I feel like a lot of times as I'm listening through like the first season, right, there's definitely a lot of moments where Alfons will say something ridiculous and mean, and not mean, but like, ridiculous and annoying and antagonistic towards one of the other party members, but you as the player are doing it with just a giggle. And so all of the other players just have to laugh along with you because you're so kind of like enthusiastic about like being the troublemaker in the trickster character. And I feel like, Alfons fits that archetype so well, and all of the other characters are so serious that we kind of needed the comic relief that you offered.
Oh, yeah. Definitely early on. Yeah. Although, despite that, both Connor and Adam managed to pull out some great
comic relief,
great laughs, because Connor, I don't think he succeeded in a single role the entire first season.
That's not true. He does succeed on roles, but I would
it
honestly,
doesn't feel like it.
I think you know what I will do? I think I am going to, when we're done with the first season here, and the podcast is all out. I'm going to go back through and I'm going to log every roll that everybody made and make like baseball cards basically for you guys as players.
That's awesome.
I think that would be fun. Make some sort of like stat card as like your roll percentage and stuff like that. I think that would be fun to do. Cool. Yeah. I mean, any other last thoughts?
I mean, not right now. Like, there's not a lot I can go into with this early in, but doing another one of these later once more episodes come out would be sweet, because I'm excited to talk about some of the just the funny and then the great character change moments. And
yeah, for sure. I would love to do at the end of each of these seasons, once they're all up out in the podcast, do a like breakdown with everybody. Or like, whoever we can get to do it. And, all sit down and just have a reminisce where we talk about the season and how it went and all that stuff. So that'll be fun. Awesome. Cool. Well, thanks for coming on, Jared. You can find more bonus content coming next week. But when this comes out, you'll be looking forward to episode 3 of Crow Inquisitors. Thanks for listening. And we'll see you soon for another episode. Thanks for coming on, Jared.
Yeah, no problem.